And this is Ayana, I think. Is that right? Is Ayana here? I don't know if Ayana's here. I don't like to talk terribly much about people's work, but this is a nice looking little courtyard. Um, Definitely feels the space. I love the laundry up there. Looking cool. Okay, this is Alice. This is really interesting. It's Alice, are you here? Let's see.
Yeah.
So where tell us about where this is and where how you picked this environment.
It's actually the second photo you provided in like the
Oh, all right.
the assignment.
Oh, all right. So it almost looks like you folded the space out. Because this
Uh,
so for example, like there's this right here should actually kind of be along this line, it looks like. Like if we could take this and then go woot and put it right here. Um, that's why I was asking if it's a different photo because I didn't recognize it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like this line right here on the buildings should actually line up like right around here because that street would go back that way. But it's nicely done. I appreciate how you shaded it all. But this part right here is just flat as opposed to, it ought to be down here. So, but otherwise, nice piece. Okay. And this is Alice. This is a really cool, Alice, do you want to tell us a little bit about this drawing? Are you?
That's mine,
Oh,
Jaylee.
oh, Jaylee. Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, yeah, Jaylee. So this is a street by your house, or did you find the photo?
That's actually, it's so sad because my drawing doesn't even do it justice, but that is a picture of the H3 highway in Hawaii.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I like how you use. I think you're getting on a lot of your drawings. I see that you're kind of used to using your eraser to get some of those dynamic lines in, which is really cool.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I like how you put this kind of that deep kind of shadow in the back, kind of give it some depth there. What's going on over here? What are these like little plants? Is that the curb or like?
Yeah, that's like the curb. Those are like the little weeds that are growing out, and then there's like a bunch of grass and trees around it. Sorry for my kids.
Right.
Um, and then that like dark stuff in the back, that's actually like a mountain range.
Right. Right. Cool. It's really
And it's like
cool.
super foggy. So I try to kind of like encapture like the fog. That's why it's shaded so much above the mountains.
Got it. It does look like a low cloud cover of some kind. So looks neat.
Thank you.
And so, Alice, did you do an interior one? I mean, sorry, Jaylee, did you do an interior one?
Not yet.
Okay. All right. So we're on
Did I
track.
get them backwards? Oh, or is it, are we doing exterior this?
So, um, so we're doing, so the assignment for the perspective was you do two, you do an interior and an exterior.
Right.
So that would count as this counts as your exterior.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Angelina? Angie?
Yeah, I'm here.
This looks good. You want to tell us a little bit about it? How did it go?
Yeah. It was pretty good. I think most of my trouble was just obviously with like the perspective. It was hard to get like the lines done correctly.
Yeah. Did you start out with your horizon line in the middle or like above on the
Yeah. I think I started with the building back there, the one with the windows.
right? Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of compound kind of angles going on in this picture, which I thought was a challenge, like up in here, and also just how there's this sort of cant to the or a kind of a angle to the stairs. So nice.
Yeah, the stairs were so hard for me.
Hey, you did a great job. You look good.
Thank you.
All right. And Asusena, this is yours, right? Is that your kitty or your dog?
It's part from there's a picture of the actual scene.
Oh, okay. Yes, there we are. Oh, got it. Okay, so that's the kitty that's on the porch.
Doormat.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, so when the way that you drew it here, it looks like it's kind of it looks like you're a lot lower.
Yeah, I was kneeling.
Oh, you were okay. And so anyways, the photo that you took is from standing up, but yeah, that's cool. This one, I see. Yeah, nice job. I like totally different perspective, but I think you really captured the low aspect that you have, like the height of the doorknob and all that. And so you did it a good job. It looks like you used your rulers pretty effectively, right? To
Yeah.
try to get some of those lines in there. Good. And then this is your interior one, and I'll
Yes.
forward it for, this is a tough one,
Yeah.
especially because of the fact that there's not a whole lot of value differentiation between the front and the top.
Yeah, I can't really find a lot of things inside that would work.
Right. Still, so if you look here, you see how these lines converge, and then what was tricky, which I appreciated you trying, was to try to get this, so this one would actually kind of curve in like that. So all these designs, like it's the right idea, but as soon as it turns the corner, they should all kind of more or less go along with these angles, sort of splaying out, so that they would kind of come out like this. You know what I mean? But that's a really challenging one, so I appreciate that you did it. And then I was wondering if you were thinking of doing any more value development in there, giving it some shading and stuff.
I was go back to the outdoor. Do you see there's a line coming through that cat's tail? I originally was planning like to do some, it says using like it says doing the, you said the assignment I were allowed to use like the graphite sticks, right? Because it would be a lot more easier to, you know,
Right.
kind of make it shaded, because the, as you can see from the picture,
Yeah.
it says light, sunlight, the rest is shadows.
Right. So yeah,
That's why I didn't put that line in the, it's on the, it's next to the number plate.
I understand. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I really like how I appreciate that you challenged yourself with this one. And then also the low aspect ratio on the other one. So good job on those.
Thanks.
Okay, and then this looks like Jocelyn. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did this go, Jocelyn? Looks good.
It went sorry about that. So it went well as far as perspective wise. I feel like I did kind of mess up in making some of the like plants on the side a little smaller than they were supposed to be, if that makes sense.
That's
Like-
okay. I mean, there's going to be some adjustments. There's so many elements in this drawing, right?
Yeah.
I like how you shaded it. Did you use different pencils?
Yeah, I used HB2, I think 6 is the highest I went to.
Okay, cool. And what's going on over here? Did you like erase, or was that a scratch?
Oh, honestly, I think that was just the lighting, because I didn't notice it until after I looked back on it, like submitted it, that it kind of gave it that weird reflection thing.
Yeah, the graphite.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry
that's
about that.
No, it's okay. I mean, you know, we can only do so much when we're photographing our stuff, you know, with our phones and all that. So no big deal, but it looks good. Looks really, really cool. I like how you got a lot of the details of the plants and that kind of thing. Gives it a lot of life. Okay, so whoops, this is Emily's. I don't know if you're here, Emily. Maybe not. Looks good. It's sideways, but it looks good. Looks like the use of the ruler came in handy for this one. And this is Amanda's. Amanda, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, So you want to tell us a little bit about how this went? Looks great. It looks like a really active space that you got going on.
Yeah, I had like a bit like trouble with this one, but I also had like a lot of fun with it as well, especially with like drawing like the chairs and like the plants in the front.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks like a real active, like I feel like I could go into the space. It still looks like looks like you at the stage that it is now, like it's not quite there, not quite finished.
Yeah.
But the perspective is really well laid out, and it looks like you've blocked in all the elements really nicely.
Mhm.
You could have gone further and just started to, use some of your darker pencils to, for instance, like I see you got the shadow going on here. And then also just looking for similar values throughout the photograph, and trying to map those in. But really nice looking drawing. And yeah, this one was hard too. A lot of different elements, kind of obscure looking elements, but I think you did a great job. There's just so many. How did you find doing this one? Did you do this with the draw along? Oops.
Yeah, I did it during the draw along.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that was kind of a tough one to do. So I appreciate it. It's a good job. All right. So guys, I'm going to kind of move along a little bit. I'll just continue to update our grades and that kind of stuff as we go. But what I thought I would do today is to introduce you guys to the portrait drawing. And so I have a little slideshow to show you, to talk about, just show you different artists who have drawn the human face. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw 3 portraits and from 3 different vantage points. So I have a bunch of slides I'd like to show you guys. So give me a sec while I get this shared. Okay. Oops. It's telling me my screen sharing is failing to start, so please stand by. Okay, maybe this will help. There we go. Okay. So let me see, make sure I have if you guys have comments, you can put them in the chat, and I'll try and follow along. Yeah, cool. Okay. Oh, Xander. Well, anyways, those are the portraits those are the perspective drawings that I had. So if you guys haven't turned them in, definitely try to get those in for me. Okay. All right. So I just thought we'd start to move into drawing people and drawing the face, and then we'll move into like some anatomy. This is Hans Holbein, and from 1527. It's colored chalk on paper. And one of the things I want to point out to you guys, and I have these slides later to show you, is that the eyes in any given face are like pretty much dead center in your skull. And I'll show you some kind of different kind of, I don't know if you want to call them pitfalls or whatever, but just like different things that people tend to do when they're just beginning to draw. This is Gustav Klimt, head of a recumbent man or a resting man. And this is black chalk. Notice how he's used the white here. This is what you would say is like a 3/4 view. So that you can see sort of the side of the face a little bit over here. So this is a 3/4 view. Vincent van Gogh, Joseph Etienne Rouland from 1889. This is an oil painting with this is an early oil painting, and Vincent van Gogh did a lot of sketches of just everyday working people, And it wasn't all just sunflowers and you know, plum blossoms and that kind of stuff. So he started out like anybody doing drawings of his everyday environment and the areas around where he lived in Holland at the time. Odilon Redon is is a symbolist artist, and symbolist artists kind of did a lot of work from like maybe like I would say 1870s in through the turn of the century. And there are a number of other artists in this group, and some of the things that they were interested in was using pictures, using imagery in symbolic or mythological ways. So a lot of times, like they'll have these kind of like Odilon Redon has this like kind of recurring element, which is an eye, and then there's like a little bug that he likes to draw, and then and this is oil, but Redon was really known for doing. I'll show you a lot more of his stuff later when we get into the color work that we're going to do with the pastels. This is Georges Seurat. Seurat was really famous during the, he was a pointillist painter, but the pointillists, he ended up becoming famous for being a pointillist painter, which was a later kind of development of the Impressionists movement in France. And the Impressionist movement was kind of cool because one of the things that the Impressionists were really concerned about was like, how do you capture the light in a world that never stays still, right? So how do you capture the light that's always changing and moving? And so Seurat he used like little spots to do his paintings. I'll show you some later, but really cool, just an old drawing of his. I've shown you some of Toulouse-Lautrec's, Henri Toulouse-Lautrec's artwork before. Very beautiful oil on canvas painting. Notice how loose it is. I'll show you some others that are much more refined, you know, but a lot of the artists from the 19th century, mid to late 19th century, especially in Europe, which is what I'm showing you guys, started to loosen up their style a little bit and stopped being so, like, in quotes, academic about what they were doing. Edvard Munch, also kind of a contemporary of the symbolists. He's also famous for that one called The Scream. This is Pablo Picasso. Picasso's dad was a teacher, an art teacher, art professor. And so when Picasso was really little, he would kind of run around the art school and kind of tag along with his dad. And he learned to draw like really young. And so by the time he was 14, he was doing just incredible, you know, drawings. But again, like, he's unique, so everyone thinks, oh, he's a genius. And yeah, it's true, it's incredible. His body of work is incredible, but he also grew up in a world that was surrounded by art, and he had no lack of training, you know what I mean? So yeah, he's a genius, but he also kind of lived in a time and in a circumstance that really lent itself to his ability to grow as an artist. This is Gustav Klimt. You saw it earlier, drawing of his, very refined drawing. And this is more, this is kind of, he's also famous for that painting called The Kiss. One of the things that he became really famous for were these really beautifully modeled portraits of people or figures. They had really elongate, kind of elegant, elegant features. And then he would juxtapose that, and juxtapose means just to like kind of compare, kind of contrast. He would contrast this beautifully modeled surface. If you ever have a chance to see, these are quite large paintings. I mean, I have a feeling this painting is something like, 6 feet by 6 feet or something. It's quite large. And all of these eyes and all this kind of stuff is all, there's gold paint, and it's just very resplendent to look at. Really cool. Egon Schiele. I really love this one. Egon Schiele was I think I talked to you guys about him before. He did pass away young, owing to the flu epidemic in the early teens. And he was a little bit notorious for like doing these really erotic-ish kind of drawings. I love this in the sense that he's put this kind of like beautiful, like wrapped around this white around this paper. I have a feeling that the yellow of the paper is because of how old the drawing is, and not because it was necessarily on like, you know, like a brown sheet of paper, although it may have been like a cream. A lot of times artists used kind of like manila type paper, which was kind of like the color of a manila folder, except a little bit slightly lighter weight, but it was also very heavy. And so they would use chalk and that kind of thing. And if you've seen an old manila folder age over time, this kind of color will seem familiar. This is another image of by Egon Schiele. So I'm just trying to show you like all these different styles of portraiture, and looking at the face, looking at the way that faces are drawn. This is George Braque. So, and George Braque and Pablo Picasso were the two folks who started Cubism. And Cubism was a movement, an artistic movement in Europe. It kind of got kicked off in the early 1900s. And it followed, there was a lot of other movements going on. There were a lot of isms, like everybody was kind of creating their own little mini club for themselves. So you have in Italy around the same time, you have a movement called the Futurists. And the Futurists were concerned with, their primary focus was how do you represent movement and energy in a world? But George Braque and Pablo Picasso were friends with this guy, Paul Cézanne. And Cézanne was a really kind of an academic, but he also did a lot of really analytical painting. And among one of the things that he's famous for saying is that if you can just find the cone, the cube, the sphere, you know, these are really fundamental forms that you can locate in nature. And if you can kind of create visual analogies of what you're seeing, you'll notice that these are sort of recurring themes. George Braque and Pablo Picasso in the early 19-teens began to ask a different type of a question. They were kind of inspired by Cézanne's commentary about looking for these kind of core forms in the world, using that as a basis. But one of the things that they were interested in is how do we more authentically, or how do we get to the real core of representing a world that's always moving? And they realized that up until this point, if you have like a still photo or a photo or a painting of a landscape or a person, that's an idealized version, and that version of that person sitting still, right? And photography at that point was still very kind of exotic and cool. Like it was a thing. Like you had to go to a studio and you get a photo taken. It was not as widespread as it is now. So to sit for a portrait or something like that was still a common occurrence. But they were saying, you know, like if we just focus on one point of view, that's sort of like this lie, a visual lie about the fact that people are composites of many different points of view that we see. So our memory of them, your memory of the face of somebody isn't like a single photo or a single image. It's actually a composite of all the different faces and all the different movements and their laugh and their smile and their smirk and when they're angry and all those kinds of things. And so what the Cubists did was they began to move around the subject. They began to go up high and down low. And so this, you can see this is the face of the man right here. And these facets, this is kind of like if you took a person and you folded the side of their face up or the back of their face up, and you sort of started to flatten out a three-dimensional space that's moving. Here's the shoulder of the man here, right? And he's holding the guitar. Here's the neck of the guitar. Here's this. And then so he's playing around with the strings. He's also probably sitting at a table of some kind. Here's his chest. I don't know what's going on back here, but it looks like something to do with the environment. He could be like on a balcony of some kind. So I know it looks like a muddy, weird mess, but in fact, it's what's called analytical cubism. And analytical cubism was a way of looking at the world as though it were moving, and how do we more accurately represent a world that never stops. We really wanted to represent the movement, also the full spectrum of what we're seeing. And then later they got into a thing called synthetic cubism, where they started to use collage techniques. This is Jean Arp. He was a German expressionist. Jan Matulka. This is a litho crayon. Litho crayons are, they're waxy crayons that are used for doing prints on stone. So I won't go into that very much. Frida Kahlo. You guys probably all know Frida Kahlo. Very beautiful portrait. I don't know if you guys know about the story of Frida Kahlo, but when she was, I think, 15 or 14, she was in a horrible bus accident, and she was impaled by, I think, like a steel pole or steel, like a signpost or something that went through, I think it went through her body, and it came out of her pelvis, which prevented her from having children. And she was in, and it broke her back, and she was in basically a body cast for like a year, and really kind of came to terms with like her mortality, you know, which I think really informed how the intensity of her paintings later on. So she survived it, and one of the things I think that happened when she was really ill was her father or mother, I think it was her father, brought her a little set of paints, because she couldn't move, and all she could do is maybe move like one arm, and that's all she had for a year. So she just kept drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing. And then that really kind of accelerated her exploration, visual exploration, into her own interpersonal kind of psychology and feelings, memories. This is a more, you know, abstract, kind of more interpretive portrait. This is a 3/4 view, so we're looking kind of like not fully along the side. Yeah, it really is interesting. I mean, we're only people, right? So like, yeah, like our tragedies, you know, sometimes people think about your tragedies as bringing you down, but in some respects, you know, a lot of us are stronger because of the tragedies that we've encountered, you know. So yeah, I appreciate that, Jamie. Emily Carr, this is also somewhat of a 3/4 point of view here. You can see the ear. And this is, you know, it's just really quick sketchy drawing with a paintbrush, really, is what I would say. I kind of feel like painting and drawing are really similar. So now Lucian Freud, even though this was super stylized, did this on purpose. He knows how to draw a head, but a lot of times, like especially children, when we learn to draw faces or heads, we end up making the forehead really small. And part of that is because if I would make the argument to you guys that we are readers of the face. And so if you think about the human face, we're actually paying more attention from the eyebrows down to the chin than we are from the eyebrows up to the top of the head, even though the eyes are directly in the center of the face itself. This is a profile with black chalk. All this kind of patterning right here is owing to the type of pressed paper that he used. This is, you can see the nose here. This is kind of interesting. It's just another, I just wanted to show you just a different way that people kind of interpret portraiture. So portraiture doesn't always have to be, you know, spot on, perfect representation of the person's face. It can be more kind of emotional. It can be more evocative of psychological states. Robert Arneson hard pressed up against it. So it looks like he's almost like pushing his face up against a window of some kind. This is kind of neat, just the use of many of the same face over and over, and just kind of this kind of repetition, which is really interesting. So I just wanted to show you like that while the portrait can be a thing in and of itself, you know, it can also be used in multiple and as an element in a larger composition. You can also start playing around with the different sizes. Luis Cruz Azaqueta is really kind of, I think he's known for these little small-headed people, big bodies. I think this is actually, I don't know what kind of, I feel like this is an etching. Can't be sure. And this is pastel color on paper, and we'll be doing some pastel color later. This is graphite on paper. I have a better photo, but it's very beautiful, rich color, rich photograph of, I mean, a rich drawing that is put together here. Here's an interesting drawing. It's got a lot of those lines that we were looking at earlier regarding like the cross contour effect, and kind of playing around with the different kind of topography of the face. You can see these really severe cheekbones, and also just how the hair kind of almost like explodes off of the face. Really cool. This is a 3/4 view, not profile, but a 3/4 view, so we can see the side and the front of the face. Really cool for those of you who are interested in doing. Lucas Amaris is a artist, and actually we had some of the same teachers, but this is a kind of a pointillist slash, you know, the staccato kind of dot work. Eye in the headlights. This and that, again, more of a conceptual kind of portrait. In fact, I'm gonna. I think it would be fun if you guys wanted to do a conceptual portrait too, but we're gonna start out really basic, just doing the front of the face. I really love that. I love it when there's so many. Then there's different elements in an image, and just so that there's representation. So this picture right here, and this is representational. In other words, it looks like the thing that the artist was trying to draw, but it also operates symbolically, right? So the hand could be peace, it could be stop. This is graphite pencil. This is kind of cool. It's a combination of watercolor and pencil. So, and it's nicely kind of organized. These are what I'd call 3/4 view. That's more of an almost profile look there. Another self-portrait, head and shoulders, colored pencil. And what's cool is this is on black paper. So the build, sometimes what you can do with colored pencil, you guys, and we can play around with it too, is you can use a hair dryer as you're drawing to melt the pencil a little bit, because the colored pencils use a wax-based binder for the pigment, and if you heat it up a little bit, you can kind of smear it around almost like a really thick paint. This is oil paint on paper, but still, oops. Sorry, big yawn. It looks like it on the bus or on the train. Ink. So by now you guys probably have a really good sense of like what ink does, what pencils do, what charcoal does. This is an interesting image. It's from behind, and it's not, and we usually prioritize the face, but I love the idea of this kind of like otherworldly yam head person coming out here. Peter Bruegel from the Netherlands. This is the artist and the connoisseur. Marie-Denise Villers. This is a painting, but again, like just kind of looking at the eyes in the center of the head here, you can see this amount of space is the same as this amount of space, and we'll cover that later. Edgar Hilaire, this is Edgar Degas, who did it, but this is a guy named Edgar Germain Hilaire, or Hilliard, I don't know how to say it. Mary Cassatt was a contemporary of the Impressionists, and one of the few women recognized in the Impressionist movement. And what was cool about her work was she showed, instead of showing like landscapes and all that kind of stuff, she focused in on domestic scenes, and particularly the world of mothers children, women. And so she has a very, it's almost like really intimate views of more quiet, personalized life. This is another image from Vincent van Gogh later in his career, as he started to become more you know, in love with all of these kind of how colors combine to create a cohesive color in total, as opposed to trying to create like a perfectly blended color. Kat Kollwitz, I first saw, she's a, I think she's Austrian or German, and she had just the crummiest of circumstances. I think she lost her husband in the First World War, and lost her firstborn, I think, in the First World War, and then she lost another son in the Second World War. And so just the loss, and also just the destruction of 2 wars that she lived through. A lot of her work is very, very intense. And I remember seeing one of her etchings for the first time in a museum, and it was like the most beautiful and tragic thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I'll show you, I'll bring it up and show you guys a picture. So this is an early Pablo Picasso, but he was a young lad. Yolanda Lopez, a Chicana artist, Portrait of the Artist of the Virgen de Guadalupe. This is done in the 70s, and I was around back then. That's how old I am. And jogging was like the new fad. It was like Pilates. It was like huge. And so like, you know, like Nike up until that point only made like basketball shoes, which were like high tops. And then they started getting into running shoes. And so the whole running industry sort of kicked off in the mid 70s. Okay, so the next series of photos, I might end up just kind of going through them relatively quickly because they're diagrammatic, and I put them in there so that what I'll do is I'll make a PDF of the lecture so that you guys can go through and kind of refer to it. But what I have here is I have a series of resources for you guys to go back to, and I'll just go through them. But the idea is that you guys can go through the PDF. This is Leonardo da Vinci. I talked to you a little bit about Leonardo da Vinci. He wrote, what's fascinating is I think he wrote in reverse. So the way that he saw things, he wrote in reverse. I guess that would be like a severe dyslexia or whatever, but instead of kind of coping and trying to fit in, he was just like, screw it, I'm just going to do it the way it works for me. But Da Vinci is really famous for the Mona Lisa, and everyone says what an amazing artist. I think he is an amazing artist, but the art was a very kind of a smallish part of his output as a person. He was lauded also for being an engineer, an architect, and just really fascinating guy. Like he's almost like one of these James Madison type people, like one of these like polymath people who just like really interested in everything, you know. And so I'll just kind of go through this quickly, and then I'll do a demo for you guys. But what we're going to do today is you can draw your own face, or what I'll do first is I'll do a demo of some of the proportions of the face, so that you can kind of see where everything goes. So one of the first things I want to point out to you guys is that when you're drawing portraits, the eye level is literally in the center of the face, of the skull. And I know that might be kind of hard to believe, that we don't really pay attention to that much of our skull, but in fact, we don't really pay very much attention to the hair when it could, because we read the face. We try to figure out, is this person mad at me? Are they happy? Am I making a funny joke or whatever, right? And so these are some of the dimensions, just like you saw before in the Da Vinci piece. There's an effort to see, when Da Vinci was doing it, he was looking and he was saying, gosh, is there any kind of a consistency to the, for lack of a better word, to the architecture of the human body? And so, and we now have benefited from that curiosity, because in fact, there is something relatively reliable about the human face, that no matter where you're from, no matter, unless, with the exception of say like you know, anomalies in birth, but no matter what culture you're from, what I'm going to show you today totally matches. It totally works. More often than not, we get Western looking people, but these kinds of the ratios and that kind of thing all match up. So when you're looking at the lecture later, or at least in the PDF file, this would be for an adult person, okay? This would be for children, and so there's these different kind of proportions that you can rely on. So the children's face usually has a bigger forehead and the eyes are a bit lower. So if we go back, you can see that the eyes here, right, more or less in the center. Oops. But if we went with that same center line, the eyes are a little bit lower on children. And then what's interesting is that it's similar with the elderly. So if you're a person who is drawing someone older, you might end up, if you were going to pay close enough attention, that whereas in an adult, the eye level is kind of centered on that blue line. It's not quite as low as the child's eye, but it's a little bit below the center line. And then babies have their own kind of thing. I scanned these from a book that I have called Anatomy for Sculptors. And what was really cool about Michelangelo de Buonarroti was that he was a sculptor and a painter. And so what's kind of neat is that when he was doing his drawings, and this I think is like kind of a, you know, it looks like David, but he sort of understood anatomy and form with his hands, and then also intellectually, so he could draw it. So what I've done here is, this is from the book called Anatomy for Sculptors, and it's nice because it, I kind of feel like if you understand some of the basic shapes and some of the basic, what I want to say, like the volumes that comprise, say, the lips, you can start to think about each separate item as containing different elements that you could assemble together, almost like, well, not like Legos, but you would have this kind of idea about how a lip works, that there are these. So for example, down here, there's two big bulges on the bottom, usually three spaces on the top, the two bulges on the side, and then that little divot, and I forgot what it's called. It has a name. If anybody knows it, you can pop it into the chat. When it comes to necks, every one of us has the same kind of muscles. They might be slightly different, but they're all the same. The contour of the chin. So these are all just kind of really handy things that you guys can use as references when you're doing your drawing. I put those in for you. This book, by the way, is fantastic, but it costs like $65 or something. So it's not something that you're going to want to like buy and just for fun. I also am putting in here some sketches of eyes, so that you can realize that the eye is not like this kind of perfect, you know, usually what we do is we kind of create like an arc here and an arc underneath, but in fact, the eye is much more like an almond shape, and that your eyeball is actually quite large, and it's about, you know, as big as my mouse is going here, and that the slit that is your eyelids is quite small, in fact. So people have all these different, there's like the Loomis method, there's all these different methods that you can go online and find, and whichever one works for you, I would just say go for it. You know, like if you find like that the Loomis method, it works better than say a more traditional method, which is what I'm showing you here, go for it. There's also sometimes, well, what I started noticing was what I noticed in student work starting in like 2009 or 2010 was that a lot of students would come to class with the skills to be able to draw anime, and anime is not it's still drawing, but it's a stylized drawing that comes from Japan post World War II. And the Japanese used to call, well, they used to call it déformé, or the sort of deformed or the exaggerated features. So to a certain extent, like there are some foundational techniques that if you know how to draw anime or manga, that you can rely on. But the thing I want you to double check, if you have that kind of hardwired in your hand and in your head, or maybe you like grew up drawing comics or copying, you know, like cartoons or comics or anything like that. More often than not, what you've done is you've adopted the tenets of the style as opposed to learned how to notice the different elements in a face, and then also to remember the actual dimensions and the actual proportions of those different elements. So I put in a variety of different sketches here, which will help you guys kind of understand some of the simple structures. I usually, when it comes to ears, I usually put the ear into 3 little spaces. There's the little doodad there, and I forgot what it's called. There's the this outside, it almost looks like the cloaca, and then there's this middle part here. So there's this swoop down and around, and then you have the little, and so, you know, people can, what you can do is you can remember those major shapes, and those major shapes will help guide you toward getting a more accurate representation of whomever you're drawing. So in this case, the thing is that eyes are not always straight across. Sometimes someone's eye is higher than the other one. So in an effort to try to not make a robotic looking portrait, don't use a ruler to go across per se. Not everyone's eyes are set up in the same exact way. Some might seem like sometimes people have lazy eyes or whatever. But I'll go over this with you guys too. So I give you all these different kind of resources to use in that lecture. And then what I'd like to do now is, if you guys want to draw along with me, you can do this in your sketchbook. But the first drawing that you're going to do for this new assignment, and again, I'm going to move the deadline to not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, and then we'll start picking up there. And we'll do draw-alongs on Monday and Wednesday, since I missed on Monday. So I'm gonna nudge the due dates for you guys. So let me switch up, and but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw you guys a diagram, and if you guys want to draw it with me, it might end up helping you out a little bit later on when you're. See if I can get this guy working. I have my camera on this little rotating thing, so I'm trying to get it so that it'll stay still. Sorry, guys. No one's getting seasick. Okay. All right. So for the first drawing that you're going to do, you're going to draw yourself. You can use a mirror, or you can use like a photo of yourself, which might be even a little bit easier. And I'm hoping you guys can see the drawing shares. I'm hoping so. Okay. Sorry, I keep asking. I just want to confirm. Okay. Trying to get this camera to work. Sorry, guys. All right. So when trying to draw the face or the frontal face of someone, there are a variety of ways that you can kind of create the head. I just go ahead and I just start out making an oval. Okay. And this is just by way of creating kind of a gestural beginning. Sometimes what people do is they'll draw a perfect circle, and then they'll draw like a little triangle underneath. That's also valid. But when you start out drawing the face, and if you guys want to do this in your sketchbooks, it would be handy. I start out usually just drawing like an oval. And then with my eye, I just kind of split the oval in half, okay? and I put a line across. When you put a line across, that's going to be your eye line for an adult. So I'm going to default to the adult face, okay? And then I can also just draw a light line that comes down through. Okay. All right. So in terms of locating the eyes are always with an adult in the center. If an older person, they're a little bit lower. And so when it comes to the eyes, these are just general rules. When it comes to the eyes are usually, whatever the width of someone's eye is usually how wide the eyes are apart. So let's say I were to draw some eyes here. Okay. And those are kind of small eyes, right? And then if I were to take this distance right here and put it right there, that's where the other eye would be. And so you can kind of correct as you go. And so this space right here should be more or less the same as this right here. And that, I know it's kind of funky, but for some reason, the eye that and even still, I have this a little bit far away, but you might think, well, how do I know how big the eye is? So at one point, you're going to have to say, okay, this is going to be the eye that I'm going to go with, right? And then, of course, you can go in and detail it later. Get an eraser, because I'm going to erase these lines. More often than not, the iris is not fully available to view from the eye. You can only see a little piece of it. Okay. About halfway between the eyes and the chin is kind of like where the nose would stop. So if you were to lay a pencil on your nostril and move it up, you would find that that pencil line lines up just on the inside of your eyes. And that's where your nostrils will be. And the nose, the way I do noses is the nostril has a kind of a look like this, right? Okay. And so there's my nose. Now, if I'm to lay my pencil down from here, and I were to make a line that just kind of goes straight down there, and a line that goes kind of straight down here. With this space right here, now keep in mind that this oval that I put on there is more or less a gestural footprint. It's not, so right now, like I do with all the drawings that I show you guys, I'm trying to sneak up on the drawing a little bit and try to get the spacing of things. So between here and the chin, what I like to do is kind of split it into thirds, okay? And about a third of the way down is where the middle of the mouth will be. And this right here will be where the edge of the mouth is. And so you can make those three lip areas, right? So we have that, and then this, and then we have those two kind of bulging areas here of the lip, right, that come in. There's my lips. The chin, this, if we go 1/3, 2/3, there's chin's usually down a little bit further down. And now I can start to block in and start to adjust. Some people have bigger chins than other people. There's some variety that can be built in. And again, these are just proportions that are generally true for every single person on earth. So if you were to lay your pencil on your eyebrow, okay, and your eyebrow come up here like that, right? If you were to lay your pencil across your eyebrow and laid it across like this, that would more or less line up with the top of your ear. And again, this is for just everyday typical people, not like, I mean, there's uniqueness everywhere. And if you were to lay that pencil along your face from your nose, underneath your nose across, that's where the bottom of your earlobe is. And you might think, God, I never knew that my ears were so huge. And in fact, ears they take up a lot of room on your head. Okay. Right. And so now, once I have those proportions in, now I can start playing around with filling out the rest. And so as you guys do your portrait, you know, depending on who you're drawing, depending on what kind of facial features they have, maybe they have soft features, maybe they have very angular features, you can start to kind of move in here. And I'm just making this guy up. I don't know who this guy is. But the hair of any given person, right, will, you know, okay. Then I can erase these bits here. Looks like a mugshot. I don't know what this guy did, but it doesn't look good. And then you can start to play around with the, you know, the ears a little bit here. You can try to remember those little tips that I talked to you guys about. And then the eyes, I think I could do a better job on the eyes, but remember that once I just started to block in, you know, some of those features, I blocked them in so that I could come back and start to refine them a little bit, right? So maybe I want the eyes to be a little cleaner, a little more consistent. And then that can come down a smidge like that. And so your neck comes like right behind your ear and even further back, but your neck is actually quite a large item. Comes down, right? And again, depending on the length of the neck or whatever, oops, I'm trying to get this situated for you guys. Okay. So once you block in some of those basics, right? So again, this is about this part right here, okay, where the eyes are. That's about halfway, okay? Half inch, not half inch, just halfway. And those are the eyes. A little more than halfway. This is the bottom of the nose, okay? Right here. And then with this space, what I do is I split it into thirds. And that's where the lips are here. Okay. So I go 1, 2, 3. And people's chins are going to be different. People's cheeks are going to be different. They might have a bigger jaw this way. And keep in mind that here's the skull, right? So if you look at this whole area up here, one of the things I'd like you guys to think about in the coming week is, you know, how much do I notice of a different person, right? And usually we just notice this part of the face. And so because the hair is just usually there. We don't usually think too much about it. And then of course you can start paying attention to the where your light is coming from. If you have a light source up here, you know, it's going to cast some shadows down this way, right? So on. Then you probably have like shadow this way. And so I'm just doing this out of my head, but it just goes to show that like you can really kind of, if you know some of the basic geometry of the human head and the human form, then you can, this is where people just sort of start to build up those libraries in their head, like I was talking about before, where you can really just begin to start to invent people and invent different characters if you're into that kind of thing. The other thing too is if you're just, maybe you want to draw your grandma or your grandpa or your uncle or your aunt or your mom or dad or whatever, your kids. Just when I put the lecture up, like for example, let's say you have a little kid, like you have a like my kids are grown, but when they were smaller, you know, if they're like between, you know, people don't really start to exhibit their adult features until they're around 16-ish, 14 to 16. And that's when your face starts to kind of flesh out. Now, of course, no one looks like this guy, right? But again, this is just by way of you know, all right. And I think in fact his nostrils should probably be a little bit bigger than that. And if the light's coming this way, there's going to be, you know, considerable amount of shadow coming on this side here, on this way. And then of course there would be shadow coming on his hair. And usually there's a blend between the chin and so on. So you can start to kind of, you can even give him a beard if you want, or, you know, give him a goatee, whatever. Okay. So that should get you guys kind of more or less on the trail to doing your own self-portrait. And so I'd like you guys to aim to have your own self-portrait done by Monday. And then also, if you haven't finished your second perspective drawing, I'd really like you guys to get those in, and we'll have a look at those on Monday of next week. So with that, any questions you guys have for me about doing portraiture? Okay, so with that, I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to show you guys today. I'll upload the slides with the information on it, and just take a stab at doing the you know, doing the your own self-portrait. You could even just take a photo of yourself and look at a computer screen and do it. Try not to lay your paper over the screen. Really try to, like, you know, start out doing the basic geometry on the faces, you know. So that I showed you here, let's go back here, just to use the techniques. Got all these lights in the way. Geez, okay. Yeah, just look for some of those tips that I'm going to put up in our canvas. And I just want to give you guys some time to keep working on your perspective drawings if you're not quite done. And yeah, that's all I have for today. On Monday, what I'm going to cover is drawing 3/4 view and then a profile view. And so I don't want to swamp you guys with too much stuff today, but there are some of the 3/4 view imagery in the lecture. So I'll cover that on Monday, and then you guys will have the tools to do. And I think what I'm going to do is I'll have you guys do, I'll just have you'll do like your own personal portrait. You'll do a 3/4 view of either yourself or somebody else. And then I'll have you guys do a conceptual portrait of someone, either fictional or real. What I did, let me show you guys what I did on the assignment. I wasn't very creative, and I put just some generic, you know, pictures of folks. Like I put Jimi Hendrix and Adele. I was trying to think, okay, who's somebody who's not gonna, you know, cause controversy. And hopefully I haven't put anybody up there who's going to cause any controversy, but I just wanted to show you the assignment. So let me do a new share. Okay. So this is the faces, and also I realized I don't know if I put the other lecture. I think I just have the one lecture for the perspective, so I'll put the other one up too, which is for the interior one. But this is the faces, so I just put the frontal view on there for now, and then over the weekend I'll put up the 3/4 view. So I kind of made it simple for you guys. I put these black and white images up for you. If you wanted to not draw yourself, you could draw someone else. This is a little bit of a 3/4 view, but I think it's kind of cool. You can kind of zoom in on that too, but try to get a variety of different facial types and hair and stuff like that. So if you guys want, you could have a really cool photo or image, or you guys can look for somebody like maybe your own favorite celebrity or sports, you know, hero, whatever. You guys can draw. What I would suggest is that you find an image online that has a decent contrast. And what I would do is look up some frontal portraits, black and white portraits of whomever you're looking for. You can also, if you want to make life easy in terms of kind of comprehending the different values that you can put into your drawing, what you could do is you could take a selfie of yourself and then just filter it so that it's like, you know, black and white or desaturated. And also maybe, you know, go outside or maybe use a light off to the side so that you have some kind of dramatic lighting on your face. And that could be really cool too. So, and plus it just gives you more stuff to draw, you know what I mean? So, so I would suggest doing something like that. These are obviously lit with studio lights, and so it's cut kind of, it doesn't really have a harsh shadow. None of these really do because, well, this one looks like it's outside, but she's in shade. So there's not a whole lot of contrast in these photos that I've supplied, other than like under the nose here. But these are all, I mean, this is sort of typical studio level portraiture, where there's a fill light, and the fill light eliminates most of the shadows on the face. Whereas if you have like a street photographer, you're going to get some really interesting shadows. You might also find someone with who's older, who has a lot of wrinkles or something. That could be also really cool. So, okay, so that's kind of what I've got for you guys today. Yeah, I was looking for a few more of the perspective drawings, but I will look for those. I forgot that I had given you guys the staggered deadline. So I'll look for those on Monday, and I'll move the other deadline for you guys forward on this assignment. Okay. So any questions for me, guys? Are you guys still with me? Did I put you to sleep?
No, we're awake.
Sorry. Okay. So in any case, yeah, so I think that what I'll do is I'll put that document up, and then I'll cut you guys loose a little bit early today. But I do want to ask that you kind of, you have 2 drawings to do, possibly some of you this weekend, if you haven't finished your perspective drawing, and also your frontal facial portrait. Okay. Any questions, guys? No questions? So I will retouch bases with you on Monday, which should be a busy day because we'll be looking at a lot of art, and then I'll do a 3/4 and a profile demo for you guys. Okay. All right. I'll see you guys on Monday.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too, guys.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.